Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to, to be here this morning and to share some of these things again. This is always such a beautiful opportunity for me that I really enjoy diving in this morning. I was reading this week, there's a passage in the book of John, chapter 8 and verse 32, I think, that says, know the truth, and the truth will make you free. And that was such a common verse to me growing up, and I never imagined what it could really mean. What is this idea of truth setting me free? So we're going to jump into that this morning because Vivekananda has a lot to share, some amazing wisdom from the scriptures on what this means, this freedom that we're all hungry for, that we're trying to experience in our life. So I want to start, of course, with my Hafiz poem. This one's called, Why Aren't We Screaming Drunks? Great question. I pose that to you. Why are you not a screaming drunk at this moment? He says, the sun once glimpsed God's true nature and has never been the same. Thus, that radiant sphere constantly pours its energy upon this earth, as does he from behind that veil. With a wonderful God like that, why isn't everyone a screaming drunk? Hafiz's guess is this: any thought that you are better or less than another person quickly breaks that wine glass. So this notion of stepping into the senses, stepping into the mind, the world of relativity, is what breaks our wine glass. And that's an idea that I want to step into here. Vivekananda starts off with a beautiful comment that really is very provocative, really set me wondering and thinking. He says, the universe is only a part of an infinite existence, thrown into a peculiar mold composed of space, time, and causation. It necessarily follows that law is possible only within this conditioned universe. Beyond it, there cannot be any law. When we speak of the universe, we only mean that portion of existence which is limited by your mind. The universe of the senses, the universe which we can see, feel, touch, hear, think, or imagine. This alone is under law, but beyond it, existence cannot be subjected to law, because causation does not extend beyond the world of our minds. So this wonderful notion that what we perceive, this mold that we've stepped into, called the senses and mind, this name and form, has presented to us a very large universe, seemingly, although that actual portion of the universe to which we are able to actually touch and actually able to experience in an intimate way is very small indeed. I mean, at any given time, it's only the length between your fingertips. And yet, we get this sense of this giant, enormous universe out there. And Swamiji is positing for us, saying that's a very small part of things, because it's the only part of reality that fits into your mind. And so you can only know the reality that fits into your mind, that reality which can take name and form, which can be pressed into its molds of expression. And so this infinitesimal part of the universe that we actually know is the part of the universe that's under law. Now, why is it under law? It's under law because the mind brings into the picture, or requires for the picture, time, space, and causation. These laws that form our experience, these laws that build our karma, these laws upon which we sit to do everything, to be engaged as the doer in this world, requires time, space, and causation. So the tool that we've been given to measure this sensual universe that we exist in, this small subset of reality, is subject to laws that cannot be broken. And so we cannot find freedom here. And actually, as a matter of fact, we shouldn't even know freedom, because nothing is free. Everything is obeying the laws of the moment, the laws of circumstance, the laws of condition, the temperature outside, the pull of gravity, the time of day, the weather. All these things act upon us. And in that, we somehow have a sense of freedom that we keep trying to project and that we keep trying to find and express, which is impossible because we're limited by the reach of our arms, by the distance of our smell, the quality of our vision. These things lock us into a mold, to a form, and then, of course, all of that encapsulated into a mind. And so we experience this tightness, this smallness of life. In his book, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle says, the beginning of freedom is the realization that you are not the possessing entity, that you're not the one who owns what's going on for you. You're not the one that owns your thoughts. You're not the one who makes your decisions. You're not the one who is the doer. In the echo of our master, Sri Ramakrishna, you are not the doer. This world unfolds very much of its own accord. We seemingly have free will. But he says that the beginning of our freedom, that freedom that we have a quest for, that we have a taste for, a longing for, the beginning of it is to know that you're not the doer, that you're not the possessing entity. You are not that which holds all of this as your own. Knowing this enables you to observe this entity. The moment you start watching the thinker, a higher level of consciousness becomes activated. You then begin to realize that there is a vast realm of intelligence beyond thought. That thought is only a tiny aspect of that intelligence. You realize that all the things that truly matter, beauty, love, creativity, joy, inner peace, arise from beyond the mind. You begin to awaken. So this understanding that we are locked in a subset of reality, that we don't have access to the full reality through our senses or even through our mind, and that even our experience of being molded into a body of senses and a mind of ideas is in itself a limitation to our nature, and it controls, in a sense, or limits the way that we're able to experience the world, this infinite reality, according to a subset of rules that are in themselves a bondage of thinking, a bondage of ideas, a room that we create for ourselves that restricts our own movement. And yet, like the other things we bring into this world, like infinity and immortality, also this idea of freedom is brought afresh into this world by the soul, knowing its infinite stretch. It squirms under the cage of the body. Knowing its infinite wisdom, it feels the confinement of a mind with its rules. He goes on, Swamiji says, it is only when being or existence gets molded into name and form that it obeys this law of causation, and is said to be under the law, because all law has its essence in causation. So all limiting factor, all law, all ideas of being subject to are because of this law of causation, this chain of cause and effect that goes on, that binds us to our actions, seemingly, that binds us to our thinking, seemingly. This bondage pressed upon us because of causation, because of the fact that every action has a reaction. Because all law has this essence in causation, therefore we see at once that there cannot be any such thing as free will. These are the words of Swami Vivekananda. we see immediately that just simply recognizing the law of causation discounts or disqualifies the idea of free will. You can't have free will where there's a law that controls what you do and say and think by giving it a direct result or a causation. And you can see this in the sense of the limited way that we actually can choose our life. You know, this morning I can't choose to go out and have a cup of coffee on the Champs-Élysées in Paris. Why? Obviously, I'm not in Paris. So I can't do this, even though my mind may conceive of it and to a degree may even want to do it. And so it is, we are limited even in our desires and our choices by the choices seemingly that we've made, seemingly in our past through this chain of causation. And it's our choices and our sense of freedom in those choices which have created the small space that makes us chafe and want to push out, to run outside and be free of obligation, to be free of duty and responsibility. He says the very words of free will are a contradiction because will is what we know, and everything that we know is within our little universe. And everything within our universe is molded by the conditions of space, time, and causation. Everything that we know, everything that we can possibly know, he says, must be subject to causation. And that which obeys the law of causation cannot be free. So this idea, what is this truth that's going to set us free? Where does it come from? You know, this idea of being free, this idea of having free choice, even scientifically doesn't hold up. I read an article in Nature magazine from April 11th, 2008. And in there's a second study, which is much more sound than the first study. The first study I've mentioned in the past, and someone came to me and said, oh, you know, that's been questioned because the nature of the experiment. And I was so disappointed because the outcome of this study was quite revolutionary and very much in support of what Ramakrishna has said about not being the doer. So a second experiment has been done by a Dr. John Dylan Haynes, a neuroscientist at the Max Planck Institute for Human Cognitive and Brain Sciences in Leipzig, Germany. And he says, your brain makes up its mind up to 10 seconds before you realize it, according to researchers. By looking at brain activity while making a decision, the researchers could predict what choice people would make before they themselves were even aware of having made that decision. So you see, even in the sense of this delusion of having free will, oh, I can do what I want, I can choose this or I can choose that, psychological research has demonstrated in a laboratory under controlled conditions through an experiment that your decisions are not even yours. You believe them to be yours, but they're just obeying the law of causation. And that the mind actually makes a decision before you, as the owning entity, are even aware of it. So we're pushed through this life of experiences with this deluded sense of freedom that comes from outside of the conditions that we're experiencing. And somehow in this world of causation, this world of laws, this world of seeming oppression, we're constantly trying to touch that freedom that we know, because it's ours to know, but not being able to find it anywhere. Swamiji says that which has become converted into will, which was not the will before, but which, when it fell into this mold of space, time, and causation, so this Atman, this real self, the soul within, that became converted into will, has become converted into this entity of experience within this world of laws. Before that, when it fell into this mold of space, time, and causation, became converted into the human will. That which fell into this mold is free, Swamiji says. That's where our notion of freedom comes from. And when this will gets out of this mold of space, time, and causation, it will be free again. From freedom it comes and becomes molded into this bondage, and then it gets out and goes back to freedom again. So in the words of Swamiji here, we got a beautiful promise. We know freedom because we've been free before we took this infinite self and put it into the mold of time, space, causation, the body, mind, and subjected it to these laws that cannot be broken. But the truth of the matter is that that which has been molded is free and knows this absolute freedom beyond body and mind. And that's where this longing and this taste of freedom comes from. He says to acquire this freedom, we have to get beyond the limitations of this entire universe that we've created. It cannot be found here. So do not think that this truth that Jesus mentions, that can bring us to freedom, that can grant to us the freedom that is ours by airship, by nature. It cannot be found in this world of name and form, in this world of mind, in the world of your thinking, in the world of your touching and seeing, in the world of your tasting. This is not where freedom can be found. Here, the highest freedom we can know is the freedom to obey our desire. We often, regularly, as a norm, confuse that to be freedom. The freedom to obey our desire. But it is our desire itself that makes us slaves, constantly feeding and pampering bodies and minds, moods and dispositions, and those of all the world around us. What a tyrant of an existence when we become aware of it. From freedom we come and become molded into this bondage, and then out we go to freedom again. To acquire freedom, we have to go beyond the limitations of this universe. It cannot be found here. Perfect equilibrium, that absolute balance of wholeness, where all is supremely satisfied, that santosha experience. Perfect equilibrium, or what the Christians call the peace that passes all understanding. It cannot be had in this universe, nor in heaven, nor in any place where our mind and thoughts can go. This is a very important point. This shows you the nature of our quest in spiritual life. It's not a philosophy or an arrangement of thinking or an arrangement of ideas. It's not a castle of wonderful thinking where we normally go for our knowledge. You see, that's why one of the first lessons that Sri Ramakrishna taught to M was this notion that there's a knowledge that's greater than sensual knowledge, a knowledge that's greater than thinking, than greater of the subset of the mind, that there's a wonderful intelligence that Eckhart Tolle points to that's beyond thinking, doesn't involve thinking, a deep and profound wisdom. Just to have a notion and to know that we live in a small subset, and that it's because of this small subset that we feel this bondage and this chafing against our infinite self. To know that that is not the entirety of reality is a beautiful freedom in itself. To know that our nature before we were formed or pressed into this mold of body-mind, of the senses, that we knew an infinite freedom, a freedom profound that transcended thinking, that transcended even the mind itself, the disturbed mind. No such place can give us that freedom, because all such places would be within our universe, and thereby limited by space, time, and causation. These little joys and sorrows that we go through, this knowledge of things ends there and reality begins, until we give up this thirst after life. The strong attachment to this, our transient, conditioned existence, we have no hope of catching even a glimpse of that infinite freedom beyond. It's this attachment to ego, this attachment to this body-mind, this attachment to this subset of limitations and restrictions, which is our personality, which is our experience of this span of life, which is our experience of the birth, sustenance, and death of a body. Until we let go of this desire to cling, to hold to these ideas as the only ideas, to hold to the idea of a life built around the desires caused by this limitation, to live a life stuck in a place of mere thinking. As long as we cling to that as our identity, as long as we hold on to that for our sense of who we are, as long as we cling to it for our security, as our refuge, as our definition of a known and happy world, we suffer and have no hope, Swamiji says, no hope of even catching a glimpse of this infinite freedom, which is our nature, which lies in that from where we come before we enter this dream of this world. It stands to reason that there is only one way to attain that freedom, which is the goal of all of the noblest aspirations of mankind. And here he gives us a very difficult list. This list of what is necessary to catch a glimpse of this infinite freedom of ours is to give up this little life, to stop seeing this little life as being the definition of being, the definition of intelligence, the definition of love, to give up this little universe, which is only as big as 5 senses. Every experience that we can dance through in this world is only a play in the number of 5, a combination of your 5 senses over and over and over again, in all of its multitudinous sense of infinity. It's limited truly and only to combinations of 5. How long will it take us to find that there is no freedom there? To understand that we cannot possibly explain our being and our nature by just the combination of 5. Giving up on this earth, giving up on heaven, giving up the body, giving up the mind, giving up everything that is limited and conditioned. If we give up our attachment to this little universe, Swamiji says, this little universe of the senses and of the mind, we shall be free immediately. Give up our attachment to the universe. That is the key and important essence right there. It is our attachment. Attachment means holding on to them, clinging on to them, but they stick to us. This is me. This is me, and we describe ourselves by describing a body. We describe our experience by describing a mind. Having completely forgotten entirely this infinity of self that lies in the inner world, the world we look out from, the world we feel from, the world we observe mind from and observe thinking from, a world we know almost nothing of through utter lack of attention, through an utter lack of awareness to its nature, to its freedom, to its infinity of peace that passes all understanding. Swamiji says there are 2 ways that are mentioned in our scriptures for breaking out of this problem. One is called neti, right? Not this. It's that backing out of everything. I'm not this body. I'm not this mind. I'm not this mood. I'm not this depression. I'm not this age. I'm not this employment. I'm not this social class. I'm not this gender. And I'm not interested in all of the petty desires and aversions that arise from accepting these limitations of myself. He says the other is called iti, or this. The former, the neti, is negative. This iti is positive. He says the negative way is the most difficult. It is only possible to people of the very highest exceptional minds and gigantic wills who simply stand up and say, no, I will not have this, and they're finished. Those people that are the Ramakrishnas, the incarnations, and their closest, their closest friends and disciples, I guess, that have that gigantic will where their no is absolute, their yes is absolute, their self-control absolute. You know, I saw this in Swami Chidbrahmananda. By the time he gave up the body, he was eating, I don't know, less than 10 things out of this infinite variety of foods. His doctors had limited it to everything. No vinegars and no sugars and no oils and, just everything. And as his food got smaller and smaller and smaller, he found no trouble in that at all. When they said no cheese, cheese no longer existed for him. That absolute will, that powerful mind, those are the people who are fit for the practice of not this, of jnana yoga, of backing out of the world through reason and understanding. They have the mind that can say, no, I will simply not have this, and the mind and body obey their will, and they come out successful. But such people are very rare. The vast majority of mankind, the yous and me's of this group, we choose the positive way, the way through the world, making use of all the bondages themselves to break those very bondages. That idea that Thakur says, Ramakrishna, using one thorn to remove a second thorn, and when that second thorn is removed, you throw out the first one as well. This paints a beautiful picture for us of opportunity, though, because to see the world as our scripture, to pay enough attention to become purely aware of the experience of being, is itself designed to train us out of this bondage, to bring us into a world of freedom. This is the nature of that. He says this is also a kind of giving up, only it is done slowly and gradually by knowing things. And when he says by knowing things, he means in the sense of knowing the nature of things, by paying close attention to their effect on our life, on our being, on our inner peace, on our inner world. To become aware of the fact that we're watching a mind, and not to believe that we are that mind, that those things are actually us. To know that we're observing a world, but we're not actually in the world. It's a mental projection. By knowing these things, by paying attention, by a simple faith in the beginning that we accept the possibility that these things may or may not be true, we investigate, we pay attention, we begin to wake up from assumption, wake up from this delirium of just bouncing from one condition to another and trying to deal with it as it is, and making sense of it with an idea of a past and a future and a desire and lack that gives birth to it. By enjoying things and obtaining experience while being fully awake. Not getting lost in the experience of thinking that there's actually something there, something necessary, something wanted, something important. No, but to have this experience and to study it, and to say, how long did that pleasure last? What did it give me? What do I have now as I sit alone in my bed at midnight? What has been the sum total of these desires and experiences? As things, they've left you alone. You have nothing but a memory of it. But in wisdom, there is much to be gleaned, much to be learned by seeing the world properly, by knowing yourself to be the observer, the witness eternally. To know the nature of this experience itself will give you wisdom and will lead you to this truth. And knowing the nature of things until the mind lets them all go at last and becomes unattached. You see, this unattached idea, it isn't born of a repression or of a denial. It's born of an understanding. It's born of wisdom. It's born through knowledge of experience of the world. It's not some religious idea that we project or force on the world around us. No, the world around us will teach us these very things if we pay attention and if we let go of the intoxication that these momentary pleasures give us, and we stop following this perfume that never quite coalesces into reality and always leaves us alone and wanting more. The former way of obtaining non-attachment is by reasoning, and the latter is through work and experience. Yes, this work and experience done with an observation, done with a clarity, done with a notion that you are observing and that it is not the thing itself. He says, whether we know it or not, whether we're conscious or unconscious of it, we are all working to get out of the dream of this world. Everything that we do is to find God. Everything that you are engaged in, everything that any man, woman, or child, or anything of any other description that's moving, that's living, that's going forward, all of those things, everything is looking for this knowledge, for this freedom, for this expression of our infinity. That's how we can learn to respect one another. We don't have to judge one another. We can know that the seed of humanity that lies within us, that image of God, is merely trying to express its nature of love, of freedom, of beauty, of intelligence, through its existence, through its sense of being. Whether we know it or not, whether we're conscious of it or not, we are all working to get out of the dream of this world. Man's experience in the world is to enable him to get out of this whirlpool. That is what your experience is trying to teach you. It's when you experience things with a clouded mind, with a world of assumptions, that these experiences become the thing that suck you into the whirlpool. But to the man or woman paying attention, to that person discerning what they're going through, what they're seeing, what they're watching, and its effects on the peace of the inner world and on the mind and on the experience of being, that person can see. That person will find his way out of the whirlpool. The rest of mankind have to go slowly through the world of work. Karma Yoga shows the process, the secret, and the method of doing it to the best advantage. What does it say? Work incessantly. Work incessantly. Be constantly aware. Work on the practice of the presence of the divine in everything that you do. Understand the nature of the world. Give up all attachment to this work. So don't do this work because it's giving you something you believe to be necessary. Simply do it in its moment as an interaction with your divine, with your divinity, with your own internal nature, the presence of God, as it were. Do not identify yourself with anything. Anything, even your thought, even your gender, even your good looks or your hideous looks, with your weight, with your age, with your job, with your social standing, with your money, with your friends, with your nation. Don't identify yourself with anything. It's bondage. It's the limitations that's squeezing you out of your freedom. It's the limitation that's causing depressions and anxieties and a constant sense of need and hunger. That's the nature of form. That's the nature of name. But your nature is neither of those. You were free before you pressed yourself into form and gave yourself name. Hold your mind free, Swamiji says. Hold your mind free. When you find it wandering toward definition, remind it of its freedom. perhaps through the name of God, perhaps through a moment of silence, perhaps by withdrawing for a second and getting in touch or sensing intuitively this inner space where freedom lies. All this that you see, everything coming into you through the senses, the pains, the miseries, they are but the necessary conditions of this world. Poverty and wealth, happiness and sadness are but momentary. This is one of the first lessons in life. Everything here is momentary, the happiness and the misery. And when you're in any of those states, to hold firmly to the knowledge this is temporary. I have not always been this way, I will not always remain this way, is a wonderful little bit of information that frees you from the intensity of that bondage of believing yourself to be sad or depressed or anxious or incompetent or ugly or old or dying or healthy. All of those things cause anxiety and need, because if we hold on to them as identity, none of them is sustainable. They will all go away. And basing a life on things that are changing is exactly what Jesus warns about when he says building your house on sand. It's not going to stand. You build your house on rock, on those things that do not change, that inner self, this inner world that we're barely even aware of. All of these things are but necessary conditions of this world, this small world, this subset of reality that we can see, taste, touch, hear, or smell, that we can imagine or cognate, that falls into the rules of time, space, and causation, which belong to the mind, Swamiji says. They are not part of the entire reality. They are only part of this subset that is interpreted that way through mind. But there's an infinity beyond that, a knowledge beyond thought, a wisdom, a profundity of being that can't be touched, tasted, heard, smelled, or seen. All of these belong to this conditioned world. All of them are momentary. But, Swamiji says, they do not belong to our real nature at all. Not at all. Our nature is far beyond misery and happiness, beyond every object of the senses, beyond every imagination, and yet we must go on working all the time. Misery comes through attachment, not through work. It is not what you're doing that's going to make you happy or sad. It is the nature of what you know about yourself as you're doing it. If you know that there is nothing in this world that can be taken, then you're free of needing to take. You're free of needing to accumulate. You're free of the anxiety of those things. You continue to work as an expression of wisdom, as an expression of love, as an expression of being, but not for anything than simply the joy of those three things, the joy of your very own nature, the very own richness of being. No preference, no aversion. What's necessary is done, because attachment is what brings aversion. I don't like this kind of work. I don't like this kind of activity. I don't like these kind of people. I don't like these kinds of places. I don't like this temperature. I don't like this sun. Whatever it is, it's attachment. Acceptance is the antidote to attachment. To be open and free, to accept everything as it is, to know that it's at least arm's length from you, that it is all an expression of wisdom, and to look and see that expression of wisdom until you come to understand that you live in a scripture, a world of beauty that is in and of itself only the expression of love and intelligence and being. In The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle goes on to say a little bit here. He says, it is all as it is. This is it. Observe how the mind labels it. So this is that being, that awareness that we have to practice. Awareness and God are one and the same. That existence, that awareness. So practicing the presence of God is very much the same in a different set of words as practicing awareness, being fully present. Observe how your mind labels this world around you. Just the labels you assign to things will teach you much about what you think about them and how attached and identified you might be with them. And how this labeling process, this continuous sitting in judgment, creates your pain, creates your unhappiness. By watching the mechanics of the mind, becoming an expert of how your mind works, of what causes what feels what takes me where, and why. By watching the mechanics of the mind, you step out of its resistance patterns, its patterns of attachment and aversion. You begin to see that those things are just parts of process. You let go of the identity that make them your aversions and your desires. Once they become personal like that, they become powerful. Once you believe your desire is your desire and not just the itch of a body, not just the misbehavior of an ill-trained mind. Once you believe that they actually belong to you and are not just some arrangement of thinking, once you think they're yours, then you think that your freedom lies in your ability to fulfill them or to chase after them or to avoid them. And nothing could be more of a bondage than that. A slave who thinks his slavery is his freedom is a lost slave. There is no freedom for that kind of mind, for that kind of being. Know that your desires, your attachments, your aversions, your definition of the world around you based on this small subset of senses and mind is but a fraction of what you are. And let that confuse you for a moment as you become aware of how little you understand of your greatness, of the wonder of what and who you are when these bondages are removed, when these delusions are cleared. As soon as we identify ourselves with work, Swamiji says, we feel miserable. But if we do not identify ourselves with it, we will not feel this misery. So he's bringing us to a measure here. The misery in your life, even the joy in your life, that's those golden handcuffs versus the iron handcuffs. Doesn't matter. They both are bondage. So understand, when you identify yourself with your likes and dislikes, when you identify yourself with your aversions and attractions, when you identify yourself with comforts of body or states of mind, you can know suffering will be the fruit of that. So Karma Yoga says, first destroy the tendency to project this tentacle of selfishness. That is what selfishness is. Your attachment to your own desires and aversions, your attachments to your states of mind, is selfishness. It causes you to measure everything by you, and not the higher you of Satchitananda, of love, existence, and intelligence, absolute, but the you of ego, the you of smallness, the you of limitation and restriction, the you of pain, the you of an occasional bliss, the you that is subject to everything around it in bondage all the time. First, destroy this tendency to project that tentacle of selfishness. And when you have the power of checking it, hold it in and do not allow the mind to get into the ways of selfishness. Take the name of God As soon as you see the mind going after desire or running away from an aversion, take the name, step back, draw the wall, and understand that is there. I, the ever free, ever pure, ever blissful self, am here, am the very definition of here. I am now, the very definition of now. And in that knowledge, find your repose, not in the future possibility of fulfilling a desire or reaching a particular state. Hold it in and do not allow the mind to get into the ways of selfishness. Then you may go out into the world and work as much as you can. Mix everywhere. Go anywhere you please. You will never be contaminated with evil if you are able to stop those tentacles of me and mine, of identity with body-mind. Then your nature of freedom expresses itself. Your nature of love expresses itself. Your nature of intelligence expresses itself through your being. This is the secret to this world. This is the ultimate spiritual knowledge. There is the lotus leaf in the water. The water cannot touch or adhere to it. So you must be in the world. This is called vairagya, or dispassion, or non-attachment, non-identity. I believe I've told you that without non-attachment there cannot be any kind of yoga. Non-attachment is the basis of all yogas, all religions, all spiritual efforts toward wisdom are born of this discernment arriving at dispassion, learning the truth and nature of things and experience by disidentifying with them and seeing them objectively, knowing yourself to be the observer. Here are the two ways of giving up all attachment. Actually, Swamiji makes a statement that I wanted to share. He says, non-attachment does not mean anything that we may do in relation to our external body. That's quite a statement. Non-attachment has nothing to do with anything that we may do in relation to our external body. He says it is all in the mind, because our entire universe is in the mind. It's the only subset, it's only the subset of the mind that our senses could contain, that our mind could encapsulate. The binding link of I and mine is in the mind. It is your mind that holds your bondage, that holds your karma, that holds you close to that grinding wheel of cause and effect. He says there's only two ways of giving up this attachment. He says, for those who do not believe in God, wonderful, wonderful. Vedanta is big enough to say that an atheist can be spiritual. that you don't have to have the clinging idea of the traditional ideas of God in order to find this freedom. He says, for those who do not believe in God or in any outside help, if you're not going to take the help of scriptures and religions and spiritualities and whatnot, if you want to do it on your own, be that self-made man, he says you're left to your own devices, but you simply have to work with your own will, with the powers of your own mind, with the powers of your own discernment, by saying, I will not be attached. Remove your sense of identity. Do it purely as a practice. It's a very difficult path, but for those who must do it that way, they must do it that way. Our love and support would be helpful for them. For those who do believe in God, there is another way which is much less difficult, Swamiji says. They give up the fruits of work to the Lord. They work and are never attached to the results. Whatever they see, feel, hear, or do is for the divine. That's a marvelous practice of presence right there. Everything that you see is being offered, so offer it in real time, not just when you go into a shrine. Every flower you see, every person you see, everything of beauty that you see, Continually offer it. Every touch that you experience, everything that you hear as you're listening to a beautiful song, don't absorb it into your own ego. Offer it in real time by listening in the presence of the beloved and saying, "Beloved, isn't that beautiful? How wonderful you are to be heard in that music." That continual sharing of you and your own divinity in this world. Whatever you see, feel, hear, or do is for God alone. For whatever good work we may do, let us not claim any praise or benefit for it. That's the formation of ego. When you claim that me and mine, that tentacle of selfishness that's constantly trying to project itself into our thoughts and our feelings and our experience of being, that which we absolutely have to cut off first and foremost, that's what causes the veil, the blindness, the delusion, the bondage, this running after a constant string of desires that will not end and will give you nothing but the tendency to do more. Let us give up all fruits of action to the Lord. Everything is worship. Everything is done in its moment, not being considered in a chain of cause and effect, but seeing as it is in its own place, in its own moment, it is offered and let go of. Offered means no identity with it, no expectation tied to it, no getting being expected from it, no giving being attached to it. It's all simply worship in its moment. Let us stand aside and think that we are only servants obeying the Lord, our Master, and that every impulse for action comes from Him every moment. Why? Because who is He? Who is this divine? Divine is love. Divine is wisdom, intelligence. Divine is being. If you allow yourself to do everything from the sense of love, from the sense of being, from the scrutiny of wisdom, then the veil gets ripped and you begin to see the bliss of living. You begin to see the bliss of being. You begin to understand that it belongs to you and not to things. You believe that it is yours through the simple fact of your existence, and not because you've attained it, or grabbed it, or earned it. It is yours by nature. Let us stand aside and think that we are servants of the Lord. Let us be at peace, perfect peace, with ourselves, and give up our whole body and mind and everything as an eternal sacrifice to the Lord, as an eternal sacrifice to love and unselfishness. An eternal sacrifice by taking not into concern what the body wants or needs, what the mind wants or needs, but to be always in the mode of expressing nature, expressing love, expressing unselfishness, expressing wisdom. Those who want to be karma yogis must throw out this idea of duty. We don't do things because we have to. That is the bondage your own mind has created, and it's utterly untrue. If you actually had to do the dishes at this moment, then everyone would have to do the dishes at this moment. We see that that's not true. So break out of these petty bondages of duty. I'm stuck. I have to do this. There is no duty for you and me, Vivekananda says. Whatever you have to give to the world, do, give it by all means, but not as a duty. Do not take any thought of that. That's a projection of a disgruntled mind. I do this because I have to. No, you don't. That's a choice perspective. That's a choosing to see the world that way. You do from love. Everything that you do is not because you have to. It's an expression of your nature, of your love. Learn to do it that way. See it and understand it that way. and you'll begin to taste freedom. You'll begin to know at least it exists. Whatever you have to give to the world, by all means give it, but not as a duty. Do not take any thought of that. Be not compelled. Why should you be compelled? Everything that you do under compulsion goes to build up attachment. Because anything you do by compulsion is of ego. It is of particular. It is of identity. Don't be compelled. Be inspired. Don't be driven. Be called. Very different experiences of being. One will take you to freedom. One will also take you to freedom. The other will also take you to freedom, but by a much more miserable and much longer road. Everything that you do under compulsion goes to build up attachment. Why should you have any duty? Resign everything to God. Resign everything to love. If you want a reward, you're going to have to accept punishment. The only way to get out of the punishment is to give up the reward, Swamiji says. The only way of getting out of misery is by giving up the idea of happiness, because these two are linked to each other. On one side there is happiness, on the other there is misery. On one side there is life, on the other side there is death. The only way to get beyond death is to give up the love of life. Life and death are the same thing, Swamiji says, looked at from different perspectives. That perspective, ultimately, is your real nature. You will be outside of the experience of death as much as you are outside the experience of life. So if you are trapped and inundated into this world as being a definition of yourself, you will die and suffer that death and believe it to be true. But if you know your nature to be distinct from the expression of it, which is this universe, if you hold firmly to that sense of self which is divine, then you will watch death happen to a body, but not to you. In The Power of Now, one of the disciples says, I can't believe that I could ever reach a point where I'm completely free of my problems. Isn't that what's in our mind right now? I can't believe that I will ever reach a point where I'll be completely unattached. I can't believe that I will ultimately reach a place where I will find this kind of contentment and this kind of inner peace. You know what Eckhart Tolle says to you? He says, you're right. You're right. You're never going to reach that place. But listen to why he says that's true. You are right. You can never reach that point because you are already at that point now. There is no salvation in time. You cannot be free in the future. Presence is the key to freedom, so you can only be free now. This isn't something you attain. This, again, is your nature. How many times do we have to be told that? Our religion, our practice does not exist on this span of past, present, and future. The experience of religion, that's why Swamiji says, it's being. Religion is being, it's realization. It's here and now. It's this moment. The condition of your inner world right now, that is your spiritual life. That is the truth. The way that you've arranged thinking and identity and the way you've accepted your attachments and your longings, the way that you've framed your life in your mind now is the delusion that simply has to be let go of, and in this moment you are free. This isn't a long-term thing, doesn't have to be a long-term thing. It can be here and now if you let go of those desires. And if you can't, then at least you begin the step, one at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time. You cannot be free in the future. Presence is the key to freedom. so you can only be free now. Observe anything that pushes back on that idea in yourself right now and let go of it. Know it to be not true. As far as your life situation is concerned, Eckhart says, there may be things to be attained and acquired. It may seem that way. Absolutely. That's the world of form, of gain and loss. Yet on a deeper level, you are already complete. This is where faith steps in, because you're not going to believe that just because somebody tells you that. You have to take that idea and hold on to it as a possibility. And you have to emphasize it and continually echo your voice through it. On a deeper level, you are already complete. And when you realize that, when you come to know your nature, he said there is a playful, joyous energy behind what you do. Being free of psychological time. Why psychological time? Because time exists only in the mind. If you live in the world of thoughts, if you're the one that's constantly caught in your head, analyzing, looking at everything like that, and never stretching your awareness to that intuitive sense of being, that this life is merely an echo, that like the psychiatrists have found, you're not even aware of your thoughts until 10 seconds after they've been accumulated. When you come to trust these things and understand these things, when you push out your living in psychological time, in the time of the world, the time of mind, you no longer pursue your goals with a grim determination driven by fear, by anger, by discontent, by the need to become someone or something. Nor will you remain inactive through fear of failure. How many times, because we're afraid of failure, do we not reach out and do? Which to the ego is the loss of self. That's why that fear is there. When your deeper sense of self is derived from being, not from thinking, but by being, when you are free of becoming as a psychological need, an addiction, this constant need to become, to accomplish, to get, to be, to have, whatever, this constant addiction to thinking, to mind. He says when your deeper sense of self lets go of all of that and is derived from being, when you are free of becoming as a psychological need, neither your happiness nor your sense of self depends on the outcome. And so there is freedom from fear. To know yourself as the being underneath the thinker. To know yourself as the stillness underneath the mental noise. To know yourself as the love and joy that is underneath the pain. This is freedom. This is salvation. This is enlightenment. Swamiji says the highest men are calm, silent, unknown. They are the people who really know the power of thought. They are sure that even if they go into a cave and close the door and simply think 5 true thoughts and then pass away, these 5 thoughts of theirs will live through eternity. Indeed, such thoughts will penetrate through the mountains, across the oceans, and travel through the world. They will enter deep into the human heart and mind and raise up men and women who will give them practical expression in the workings of human life. You can see this in the words of the Buddha, in the words of Krishna, in the words of Jesus. All of these great luminaries, the truth that they uttered became and is and will always be eternal. And that is because they will eternally resonate within our hidden knowledge of ourself, that we are that freedom. So in working, we should never think that we can help even in the least thing in this universe. We cannot. We can only help ourselves in this gymnasium of the world. This is the proper attitude of work. If we work in this way, if we always remember that our present opportunity to work is a privilege which is given to us, we shall never be attached to anything. All power is the Lord's, and within her command. Through this command the wind blows, the sun shines, the earth lives, and death stalks upon the earth. He is in all, in all. He is all and in all. we can only worship him, give up all fruit of work, do good for its own sake. Then alone will come perfect non-attachment. The bonds of the heart will thus break, and we shall reap that perfect freedom. Know yourself to be the being behind the thinker, the stillness underneath your mental noise, the love and joy underneath your pain, because this is the truth that will set you free.